G'day, ZiggyD here, back with another Pathfinder Dungeon Master vlog. As you can tell, me and Amy here are setting up to play, we're going to play a session of Pathfinder and we're going to try and do it live. Now, you can go now. Okay. So you guys will find out what she's doing later, but she's doing a little bit of cartography and she only has a very limited time to do it, and I'll explain why shortly. So in this I'm going to be going over, I think it was our sessions 3 and 4, just doing a bit of a recap, and I'm sure Amy will be able to help me out with a bit of input on what we've missed so far, because we've actually missed 2 sessions and I wanted to recap those before we go into this live session, and hopefully this comes out pretty interesting and you guys get a bit of fun out of watching it. So I did take some notes out of session 4. What?
Don't talk so fast, I'm running out of time.
You got plenty of time. I have to recount 2 sessions. So yeah, we'll explain that later. So I've got some notes from session 4, but we're going to have to just remember session 5 because I didn't actually take any notes from it. So at the end of session 3, you guys maybe remember that Amy's character Elsbeth was leaving Killick Island. She did pretty much everything she could do there. She fought off the Sinspawn scale creatures there. She got the Silver Elven Ring Moonsong and was ready to head over to the mainland. So she also leveled up then, and we had an interesting experience there. So she rolled her hit point dice when she leveled, and you know, as that can go, she rolled a 1 hit point. So she was pretty distressed about this because just prior to that she was paranoid about dying to the sin scales, and I actually talked about that in a previous vlog. But that's good, you want your players to be scared. So I guess being a bit of a softie and her looking at me with her puppy dog eyes.
There's nothing soft about it.
She paid half of her gold, which was 100 gold, to Jexel. We just sort of made this up on the spot. You know, she sacrificed 100 of her gold for a chance to re-roll her hit points, and she got a 2. She rolled 2, so she got 1 more hit point. But she was pretty annoyed about that. But I said, 100 gold for 1 hit point is a pretty good deal. I bet if any players in the late game could trade 100 gold for 1 hit point, they'd be pretty happy.
And you said I'd be happy about that 1 hit point later on.
Yes, and you were, I think, from memory, you were.
I was, and then you reminded me.
That 1 hit point had saved her life, and probably will continue to do so for a long time. Anyway, so she took the ferry over to the mainland and arrived at the Meehan village port, which is kind of just it's more of a town. It's a bit larger than Killicker is, but sort of still out in the middle of nowhere, which I can actually switch us over to the world map here so you guys can get a bit of a view. We're using Roll20, the website, for this session, and it should make things a little bit more interesting. So let's switch the players over here and you guys should see a bit of this. I'm going to have to zoom it out because this is a hand-drawn map here that I've uploaded, so it's a little bit dodgy looking. But she took the ferry over from Killick Island to the Meehan port and town. Now what she's actually doing now is copying that out, because in Meehan, one thing that she did was she went to a general store, I believe it was a wizard's shop, and the wizard owned a world map that was drawn by his father, or owned by his father, or something like that. And she didn't want to purchase it because of his sentimental attachment to it. So instead she offered to pay some gold just for a bit of time to copy it. So in-game he gave her 1 hour. So this is what's going on here. I said she can have about 10 minutes to copy it out as best she can, and that's the map she has to work with until later in the game if she gets a better one, or you know, that's the map she has to work with, and she can add her own notes onto that. I thought that'd be a bit of fun, so that's why we're going to speed through this as quick as possible so she doesn't have time to finish her map. So she arrived at the Meehan port and village, and very, very soon after was met by a small boy. Ran up to her and gave her a letter, and it was from the local sort of town major trader dude, the rich guy in town, saying that, you know, he wanted to personally thank her and give her a reward for her participation in the bringing of the Killicker Island bandits to justice, basically. So it was all very flowery and formal, and it asked her to meet him at sundown. So, killing some time before then, she went to a tavern where she met an NPC by the name of Oren. Now, I can say that this was intended as a potential NPC party member because she now has that person in her party, but that's for a little bit later on. You guys might remember from my last vlog that I explained about how I came to and developed Oren as a character, but so far I think he's a pretty interesting character, and she seems to be enjoying his company a bit on her travels. Yeah? She's a fan, so that's good. So sundown came, and she went to Braska's house, which is the name of the wealthy merchant, and he invited her in and sort of thanked her and said that
I didn't like him.
She didn't like him at all. Let it be known that he was short, plump. He had his hair combed forwards. He was oily. He was, how did I describe it? He was chest height, and that's pretty much where his gaze lingered for most of the encounter as well. So he's a good sort. So he brought her into his office, and they sat down and talked for a little bit, and then he said that he would like to go fetch a reward for her, and he was going to go to his storeroom to get a small bag of gold to give to her. So by this point, what were you thinking?
I was so suspicious. I was like, okay, no.
So
I need to leave.
So expectedly. So what did you do? You went over to, at that point you went to the window and opened it, right?
Yes.
And right at the top, a point, she opened the window with a creak. She didn't quite sleight of hand it open. The door opened, and a large, ugly half-orc named Bog the Basher stepped in, holding a sap in his hand. And seeing her about to jump out of the window, he started to run up to her, and she attempted to run out the window. Now, Amy's character is a dual druid rogue, so she's fairly acrobatic, and her acrobatic skill is quite high as well. However, she rolled a 1 on her attempt to get out the window. So, I thought we'll do a d20 roll here to check how well she can jump out of a window when under pressure. And basically she bashed her head on the windowsill and, fell back inside the room. So at that point, Bog the Basher grabbed her around the waist, and they ensued in a bit of a grapple combat. And it was quite a long battle of her slashing at him, and her monkey Nook gnawing at the back of his neck, taking chunks of half-orc flesh out in his mouth. Nook got his bloodlust out again, his eyes glowing red like it tends to do. And a fairly lengthy battle ensued, but she was able to just barely overcome him.
I set his pants on fire.
She used Spark and Druid's spell to set his pants on fire, and because he was leaving his pants unattended since he was occupied with trying to grapple with Elsbeth, his pants burst into flames, and that was able to turn the tide a little bit, and she was able to overcome him. A second guard was called in, about the time that the fight went south, and she was able to kill Bog the Basher just as he was coming, and then
and the line that what's his name, Braska is like, is it done yet? And I turned to the orc and I'm like, yeah, is it done yet? Wah! And I missed. And I got my sword stuck in the desk.
That was it. That was a thing. Yeah. They had a little bit of a fight at the desk, and she tried to do a badass line, roll a crit, that sort of thing. Look uber cool, but you should know, if you're trying to look uber cool, do it after you roll your crit, not before, because you can roll a critical miss. So she did that and got a short sword stuck in the desk. But they had a bit of a fight and ended up in the doorway. And the fight was probably about 5 to 10 minutes long, of them swinging and hacking out chunks of the doorway, basically missing constantly. So by the end of it, the doorway that was, a square normal doorway had become like a big arch because it had all been carved out by their wild blows. But she was eventually able to overcome him, and then she ran out into the hallway, and I believe she shot Braska as he was trying to get into his room with her blow gun with a sleep poison dart, and he fell asleep. So then, what was your move after that? I believe you tied him to the bed.
Mm-hmm.
So she tied him to his bed and raided his storeroom. In there, she found a chest. There was a bunch of stuff in there. Basically, the story is that Braska had been employing these bandits on Killick Island to steal from the pilgrims, religious artifacts and things, so that he could then resell them back to other pilgrims. That was his business. Pretty shifty stuff. But she raided his storeroom and took a chest full, about 450 gold, so a nice little haul. She also found a stack of letters that implicated him in the crime. She took them all. Now, at this point, she left him tied to the bed, and she went to the town guard, basically, to, accuse him of the crime. And she went in there, and... I
was sorely tempted to set his house on fire.
She was tempted to set his house on fire, but I guess her good side got the better of her. And she gave the letters to the guard, but the guard, there was no seals, there was no signatures on the letters. She just comes in with these random letters and these wild accusations, and The guard
I was
wanted more
almost
proof.
dead. I had 1 hit point. This is where my one
She
hit
had one
point
hit
come in.
point. Yeah.
And he arrested me.
And he
It's
arrested.
not fair.
He kept her overnight to just make sure to actually, to find out the truth. And after a fair bit of a heated debate the next day, the local wizard was eventually able to find a necklace that belonged to one of his pilgrim friends that had been stolen in Braska's keep. So basically, setting Amy's Elsbeth's story, true, proving it true. And Braska was hauled off, and she got to keep the gold. They didn't know she took the gold, and she got to keep it. So that was pretty cool.
I was pretty distressed that they were going to lock me up and then kill me.
Yeah, well, it was a stressful time for everyone. So the next day, after all of this
How
shenanigans,
can you say that? You're just sitting in the wings going, wah.
it was a stressful time. I wanted you to get justice as well. The DM isn't out to kill the players. So the next day, she sets off on the Meehan High Road with Orin, who she had employed his company as a guard, and they also had 2 other pilgrims, an older gentleman and a younger man who was basically a priest and like a page boy or something like that. So they set out, and I don't believe too much happened on the first day, right, of travelling? They travelled from lunchtime through the first day.
The redwood bead.
So a redwood bead that she'd uncovered earlier in Killica, she was able to find out from the wizard that helped her, get free. Found out that it was a campfire, instant campfire. So you speak the word campfire in Elven to it, on the ground, preferably a little bit far away from it, and it springs into life as a campfire. So that was pretty cool. So they continued along the Meehan High Road, and eventually came to a landslide. The entire road was wiped out. There was no obvious way to get around it. So they spent some time, she spent some time trying to figure out how to get across it. They considered making a bridge with nearby trees. But as she was trying to climb the landslide area, she managed to successfully roll a perception check and noticed a small kobold-shaped figure on top of the ledge. So after searching around, they uncovered a path, and then I believe they prepared to... You were feeling pretty gung-ho, I guess, after your early Killica success.
I was showing off.
She was showing off for Orin. That was what's going on. So they planned to take out the little kobold encampment, which turns out had about 9 kobolds in it. And I was actually pretty proud of how she handled this one. Basically, they got them in a choke point. Orin had to fight with one of the kobolds, and she used a spell that... Entangle, is it? Yeah, entangle, to grow over local weeds and vines and things like that. And entangle 8 out of the 9 kobolds in an area, pretty much rendering them useless. So from that point onwards, they were able to fight them down in a pretty lengthy battle. Just taking pot shots at these tangled kobolds, until there was only 2 kobolds left, a very weak one and a heavily injured leader. So she tied them up and asked them for the key to their local storeroom. So they gave her the key gladly, and happy to have their lives spared. And she walked off to the storeroom, put the key in lock, turned the lock, opened the door, and had a javelin impale her in the belly. Basically, kobolds, if you're not very familiar, are very, very crafty little creatures. They're quite good at setting traps. And I guess Amy's character Elsbeth didn't know this because she didn't bother to check the door.
I thought about it.
So this actually rendered her unconscious, down to the below 0 hit point state. So luckily, because all of the kobolds had been subdued, and because Orin was there, she was able to be, brought round to be looked after, and not actually permanently die right at that point of the game, because that could have been a permadeath situation if she hadn't have taken Orin with her, or if she had tried to open the door earlier before fighting the kobolds, or if something else had have went wrong, it could have been a very nasty situation. But she was able to be healed up, and then I guess after taking the treasure, which was quite a lot of wealth actually, a lot of sort of just a good mixture of treasure hold, some nice money and stuff.
I gave some to the other people.
A few
too.
platinum pieces. She gave some copper to the other guys that she was with, and
Spyglass.
Oh, and a spyglass. That could come in handy later.
It did come in handy.
Ah, yes. Used it to find a Kobold scout, which we'll get to in a little bit. So, to punish the Kobold leader for his insolence and not telling her about the trap, she was like going to kill him, but he asked for a duel. So she, I guess, respecting the Kobold's honor, possibly at the suggestion of Oren.
It was just because you were doing the script voices. You have to show them the script voice.
I don't recall the script voice. Anyway, moving on. She had
Yes, you do.
She had this duel with the kobolds are simple creatures and they maybe have cute voices, but
No, kill.
So she had this duel with the kobold in which the kobold almost managed to kill her again, crit spearing her in the belly in this little duel, even though he only had 1 hit point left. But she was able to kill him, and then I guess having had enough honor for one day, she just slit the throat of the other kobold as he was tied up. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. So I think that's where we... she posted the younger boy as a lookout while they spent some time recovering. And it turns out a kobold scout came back. So she went outside to, to basically engage with the kobold scout with the mindset of, capturing him so she could ask him if there was any other kobolds coming in the area or anything like that. So she went to take a shot. So this is what happened. She took out a bow and aimed for his leg and tried to shoot at his leg. Now, she rolled a 1. Now, being the dungeon master that I am, I decided that a critical failure on an attempted wounding with the sole intent to not kill the person you're shooting, I think should result in a face shot. So she shot him right through the eye. I think Oren said something like, well, I guess we didn't want to question him. And that was pretty much where we left off. So they've been camping out at the kobold place. They're pretty much fully healed up now and I guess ready to move on. And that's pretty much it for our recap, right?
Yep.
And you are done. Holy crap, she perfectly copied out the map in that time. I guess we took a little bit too long with that. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this recap and now we'll actually get started with our session. I'm ZiggyD. This is Amy. And thanks for watching.